Where's the committee on far left extremism, Antifa? We talk about January 6th and the unjust actions that were taken for a lot of these people. Look, some of these people I think were violent, should be criminally charged. You know, like I said, Tucker shows the violent footage. But just in this past week, in the past few months, we had a group of 150 far left extremists break into a government compound, a facility in Georgia, firebomb buildings and equipment. So, some of these people were not from this country. One of them was a lawyer for the Southern Poverty Law Center. The Southern Poverty Law Center admitted it and said that, he's a legal observer. And then the spokesperson tweets out a hashtag in support of the terrorists. These people have been charged with domestic terrorism. How is it that the entire cycle, the news cycle, I understand the media is going to ignore it, but where are we in terms of putting together the Select Committee on Far Left Extremism? How about we have the May 29th Insurrection Panel, the Select Committee on the May 29 on 529, and we can talk about the far left extremists who tore down the barricades of the White House, firebombed a guard post, set fire to St. John's Church, injuring I think around 70 to 100 police officers, forcing the president into a bunker. How about we bring cops in to testify on that, cops who were injured, we bring in witnesses and journalists, and we put all of that on the record.
So I'm here for it. Understand, though, remember that in a lot of ways the two parties do the same thing in Washington. And so the only reason we have a select committee on the weaponization of government is because when Matt and I said, we're going to negotiate over who gets to be the speaker. We're not just going to cast votes just because 180 of the members, Republican members, say we're going to do it.
That was great, by the way.
Well, I mean, the first couple of days it wasn't so great.
Yeah.
But, for us. But I thought it was important to do. So did Matt. We stuck to our guns. That's really the first time there have been a lot of coup efforts, I guess you'd call them, if you want to call it that.
I wouldn't use that word
That's a bad term. That's what they called it. That's a friend of ours in Congress called it multiple coup efforts against the,
They call us the Taliban 20.
Yeah.
That is the coolest nickname I've ever been a part of.
Crenshaw said we were legislative terrorists. But we stuck to our guns. And a very material part of the agreement that in fact, I negotiated the authority for that subcommittee myself, and so these aren't easy to get in the sense that a lot of people want to ignore stuff and don't want to.
The question will be, to what extent were U.S. taxpayer dollars used to try to fuel some of those groups through NGOs, through a lot of this diversity, equity, and inclusion funding that we do? I think we got our next guest here, man.
All right.
Want me to bounce first, Steve?
We'll rotate down and let the honey badger join us.
So I think the mics, I see people saying pull the mic back. I push the mic way back because it looks like they're very sensitive.
On top of them or something?
I guess they're picking up too well now.
Okay.
Of course.
Right. It was like really quiet. We're like trying to get close, and then we're like, pull away.
Gotcha. Sorry.
But is it
Joel, Steve coming in?
Steve Bannon? The Timcast vibe. You got to get accustomed to that.
To the what?
To the vibe.
Oh, the vibe.
Yeah.
It is a vibe.
I blame the deep state for the audio problems. It happened last time.
No, the last time we had the audio problems.
What up?
Look at this.
Steve Bannon.
The honey badger in the Capitol. It doesn't get any better.
Never met the man myself.
Hey,
Dan Bishop.
How you doing? Honor.
Good to meet you, Steve.
So we'll let Bannon get seated. We're talking about Dan and my trip to go through all of the January 6th committee documents. Adam Kinzinger was able to get...
They sent the two right guys.
Well,
right?
we believe today was the first time that any lawmaker, any Republican lawmakers...
I think the mics are really sensitive
I was
right now
on
for
top
some
of
reason.
the mic too much.
Are you going to host and direct too?
Direct the whole thing?
Yeah, whole thing.
Absolutely. So here's what we were talking about, and I'm curious in your thoughts, Mr. Bannon. Some kind of Antifa committee, or at least a component of exploring the far left extremism we're actively seeing right now. I think we get two things out of it. One, accountability for what we saw in Georgia, what we saw in Portland, what we saw with Chaz, and all that stuff. It's accountability. We could stop what's actively going on if we shine a light on it. We can get accountability for the past actions, and then I think it might wake up a lot of Americans to the degree of violent extremism coming from the left that's not being portrayed in media.
I think that's a great idea. I think what we need is to put all the effort into reconstituting a J6 committee and let them have a ranking member in a minority council and set it all up and go back to the beginning. I think this is one of the biggest things in the country, and I think you need top people. like we have here on this committee, and all the information's got to come out on the intelligence services, on the FBI, everything, what we knew, what we didn't know, all of it. I mean, Tucker did a thing, and don't get me wrong, the Antifas needed too, but I only think we got so much bandwidth to do things, and this has to be answered.
Yeah.
It can't continue on like it is. You can't continue to rely on guys like Tucker doing a heroic job with the 44,000. We need a formal investigation, a select committee if you have to, of major players from the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, not like the show trial she had, but actually have a ranking member. Do it
So
like
wait,
Thursday.
you've said that a few times,
Yeah.
and it is a decision point we are at right now, because Democrats have used their presence in these transcribed interviews to obstruct the investigation,
Yes.
to try to deter whistleblowers,
Yes.
to smear patriotic Americans who joined the premier law enforcement agency in the world because they love our country, as we all should. And I don't think they should get to participate anymore in those transcribed interviews if they are using that courtesy to try to do harm to the investigation. And you're saying, bring them in, do to them better than they did us.
I just think, look, I think in that regard, they play Smash Mouth. I think we have to start playing Smash Mouth, right? But I think you have to, if you don't constitute it where they get the information and are able to cross-examine witnesses, we're going to have the exact same show trial we had the first time.
Steve,
These are such deep issues that the American people have to get to but we have to get to the bottom of this. This is like Watergate. This is like Iran-Contra. This is like the 9/11 Commission. You know, they always say it's like Pearl Harbor had 7 different commissions, 4 of them in the Capitol, right? And they still never quite got to the thing, but they kept going over and over because the American people deserve answers. The American people deserve answers. Even if you guys, and I think there's enough tough guys like yourself that can get in there and make sure they're not leaking depositions, they're not playing games with the press, all of that. It's going to be tough, but I think it's got to happen.
One thing I found interesting when we went through the files today, they are incredibly well organized. And as it relates to outgoing documents, they are almost completely complete. You can go through by name. You can pull I pulled the Charlie Kirk file, and I saw the way that the Turning Point organization was targeted, and is actually still being unfairly targeted. I pulled the Bernie Carrick file and saw the way they went after him. I pulled the Mark Short file, and I saw how eager he was to cooperate, and how even with friendly witnesses, they played this game with the subpoena nonetheless. But there was one file with no documents in it that I reviewed, and it was the Steve Bannon file.
No documents.
There was the Steve Bannon file.
They've taken it. It's waiting for me in federal prison for my 4-month sentence, right? The warden will have it. I'm sure justice has it.
In a circumstance where they were so meticulous to have everything indexed and included, and in almost every case, you saw a letter, and like clockwork, within 14 days, a subpoena that followed that letter, and nothing on the Bannon file.
So it's empty?
It is.
There's a file.
We found the Steve Bannon
There's
file.
nothing there.
Man.
Well, I not to get in my trials and appeal, but I think if you did, it's not that what I would want to do to J6, but there's no doubt that the general counsel for the committee perjured herself multiple times in my trial. To have a general counsel say, "Oh, I didn't know that was happening. I didn't know." It's just it beggars belief. It's incredible.
Well,
Can you subpoena
also
this person?
we are looking at the members and records, and I want to know how far they crossed the line when we exercise our subpoena power, because what I observed was that almost every week the committee was sending out to Sprint, Verizon, T-Mobile, to Google Voice.
Banks all over the country.
Hey, all of these phone numbers, I want all of their records.
Yes.
All of these bank accounts, all these Amex cards, all of the PayPal accounts people had, wanting all of the records. It was such a wide dragnet, and I wonder whether or not some of these phone numbers are going to match up to members of Congress.
Yes.
I wonder if they're going to match our staffs.
It was interesting to see that the subpoenas depicted. There must have been some very good conversation going on between big tech companies, big telecom companies, and the committee, because the committee would send out a subpoena to the banks, and it would say it would ask for these internal file numbers of the bank, and they give like 30 file numbers.
Oh, they'd already had.
Which they had obviously already been furnished,
given, right?
But they nonetheless then subpoenaed it and got it. So, but that kind of relationship is pretty.
But that
weird.
even of itself even if you don't reconstitute the committee, which I strongly recommend you guys do, just to put that in front of the American people of how gun deck this thing was, right? How organized it was with these parties.
far as
But
I'm
what
concerned-
Tim is saying is that we need to pick up these tools and use them to deconstruct what is a dangerous weaponized left.
100%.
Well, so for one, I'm fascinated by the fact that we have active Antifa terror, right? I hate to say Antifa; it's far left. It's a plethora of groups or whatever, actively firebombing houses. They flipped a guy's truck over, random guy, flipped his truck over, set it on fire. They shot a cop. This is escalating. A French and a Canadian guy were involved. NGO lawyer was involved. So we have that actively happening. But I do agree. I think. For one, I think the American people aren't being told what's going on because it's being ignored by the press because it's bad for them. They want to side with their audience. And I think we can force them to cover it if we had some kind of, hey, look, we're going to do the same thing. At the same time, I'd love it if you guys subpoenaed Ray Epps. I don't know.
That would have to be part of it. I think you have to use the facial recognition and go to the DHS and go. You have to find out how many federal agents were there.
Yes.
There's obviously federal agents. You have to. I mean, my point is you have to go back to the beginning and find out what people knew. I had Chris Miller, the acting Secretary of Defense at the time. He was on the show. He had a book came out. It's 300 pages long. 20 pages deal with this situation. I think I'm the only guy who read it because he's got explosive stuff. He, as Secretary of Defense, couldn't get anybody organized in FBI or just anything to even have a meeting to plan on security. He just keeps watching TV. So he finally called, and they would meet on Sunday afternoon before the Tuesday. I think January 2nd or 3rd. He has a Zoom call. Now, this is the acting Secretary of Defense. He's got the FBI, DOJ, all of it. And they're sitting there going, yeah, we have intelligence. There's going to be 35,000 people there. And he goes, gosh,
Really?
they had 1 million in November 12th. They had 75,000 on the 14th. Hey, he says, oh, we've done this. We got intel, 35,000. And he goes, well, can we help? Can we get troops? Can we get National Guard? I can get all this stuff. And they was told, no, the D.C. Metro and Capitol Hill Police can handle up to 1 million protesters, and it's fine, and that'll be fine. And he says, well, how many need? Bowser finally asked for 325 National Guard, which he deployed, to Andrews Air Force Base. Wouldn't even let him in the Pentagon. Didn't want him in the city. Andrews Air Force Base, which is 45 minutes away in traffic. He goes to the White House the next day for Trump on another separate meeting. And Trump's sitting there, and it's another. I think they're going to pull the troops out of Korea, right? So he's leaving, and Trump goes, "Hey, are you ready for tomorrow?" And he goes, "Well, I think we are, sir." He says, "What are you doing?" He says, "Well, we've had this big meeting, and I've got 325 troops that are going to go to Andrews." And Trump goes, "No, you're going to need 10,000. You should call up 10,000." It's in the book right there. He says, Trump said, "You're going to need 10,000. You should get them up. And you should pre-station them." He says, well, they don't want it. The mayor doesn't want it. Nancy Pelosi doesn't want it. Nobody wants it.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.